Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to leave your baseball picks in the comment section below. If you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. I'm running a daily $15 MLB best bet, so you can check it out at Pick Dawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Thursday, June 2nd. First up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Detroit Tigers. We're going to see Chris Archer and Alex Faedo as your projected starters here. I really can't trust either starting pitching option in this one. Chris Archer, a guy that I said I was worried about in terms of regression, and we saw him really struggle last time out against a pretty weak Royals lineup. He went only 4 innings of work, 7 base hits, 5 runs allowed total. Only 3 of those were earned, but he only had 1 strikeout in those innings. And, the common theme for Archer, not a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks allowed, a good amount of home runs allowed as well. And I do think, even though the Tigers' offense has been one of the worst in the American League this season, I do think they'll be able to get to Archer in this spot. They've been competitive in this series thus far. On the other side, though, I can't really back Alex Faedo going up against a pretty good Twins lineup. Now, I know guys like Byron Buxton have struggled a little bit, and Carlos Correa remains out of the lineup due to COVID. But this is still a pretty strong Twins lineup, and Alex Faedo in the bottom 14th percentile in average exit velo, bottom 5th percentile in expected batting average, bottom 8th percentile in expected slugging. I cannot back him in this spot. Going up against a Twins lineup that has fared pretty well against righties as of late. Give me the over in the Tigers-Twins game. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Texas Rangers. Corey Kluber and Taylor Hearn are the starters in this one. At the beginning of the season, I mentioned that I thought Taylor Hearn was pitching better than his ERA suggested. But right now, some of the things that I liked in his game, he's kind of strayed away from, and that includes his strikeouts. At the beginning of the season, Hearn was striking out double-digit batters per 9, but now he's not really striking out as many guys, 8.48 Ks per 9. That's, but a little bit around average for a starting pitcher, but Hearn's allowing well above average in walks and home runs per 9 at 4.24 walks per 9 and 1.56 home runs per 9. So a 5.36 ERA and a 6.44 expected ERA. I know the Rays haven't really done too well against lefties overall this season and as of late, but I do think this is a good spot for him to get to Hearn here. Corey Kluber has been really solid for Tampa Bay this season, a really good veteran signing. ERA just above 4, but he's going to be able to get you some solid innings, and the Rangers have not hit righties nearly as well as they've hit lefties this season. So I'm going to take the Rays here on the money line. In our next game, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. A pair of righties going at it in this one in Johnny Cueto and Alek Manoah. So a veteran of the game in Cueto going up against one of the young and up-and-coming pitchers in Alek Manoah. Manoah 5-1 with a 1.77 ERA. Cueto 0-1 with a 2.41 ERA. He hasn't had a ton of outings yet this season. He's pitched well for the most part with his new club. He did struggle quite a bit, though, in his last outing against the Chicago Cubs. He pitched 6 2/3 innings, so he went deep into the ballgame, but he only had 2 strikeouts, allowed 3 walks, 9 base hits, and 5 earned runs. And the thing that worries me the most about Cueto, he does put a lot of runners on base and doesn't miss a ton of bats. He's not the guy that's going to give up a lot of home runs. Right now he's in the top 89th percentile in barrel percentage, top 70th percentile in expected slugging. So not a guy that's going to give up a ton of extra base hits and home runs, but he is a guy that puts a lot of runners on base, bottom 17th percentile in expected batting average. And I do think going up against a Toronto Blue Jays lineup that is heating up quite a bit, I do worry about that, especially going up against a starter that's been so strong in Alek Manoah. A sub-2 ERA at this point in the season through 2 months of the season already. Very impressive from the youngster. I think, especially when you look at how the White Sox have struggled against right-handed pitching this season. I know they're getting some key guys back in the lineup like Luis Robert and AJ Pollock, but still, I can't trust them in this spot with Cueto on the mound. I'm going to take the Blue Jays here on the run line, lay the 1.5 runs. In our next game, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Miami Marlins. Now, we don't have an official lineup for this game quite yet. I think probably because the Marlins played a doubleheader on Wednesday, so there could be some uncertainties of who's available out of the bullpen and in the lineup. But right now, we see the projected starters of Alex Wood and Sandy Alcantara. I do think the Marlins bats are going to struggle here. Not only are they facing a lefty, and we know the Marlins have struggled quite a bit against left-handed pitching this season, where they're ranked dead last in baseball right now in team OPS against lefties and 25th in baseball in isolated power. They're also striking out more times than any other team in the league against lefties, 29.9% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. So not only do I think their offense is going to struggle for that reason, but also this is their first game back at home after a Coors Field road trip. We know, I've mentioned before, I do like to fade teams, especially offensively, when they're coming back from Coors Field. The altitude change is a lot to handle, especially playing a doubleheader on Wednesday and having no days rest in between. I think this is a really tough spot for those Marlins batters. But luckily for them, they're going to have Sandy Alcantara, their ace on the mound, who has implemented himself as one of the top pitchers in the National League this season. A 2.00 ERA coming off an absolute gem against the Atlanta Braves, where he went 8 innings of 1-run ball with 14 strikeouts and no walks allowed. His last 17 innings, he's given up only 1 earned run with 21 strikeouts. I'm going to take the under in this game. I think runs are hard to come by from both teams. Give me the under in Giants-Marlins. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to see Yoan Adon and Graham Ashcraft as the starters in this one. Now, the Reds had a big-time losing streak at the beginning of the season, but they still don't have the worst record in baseball any longer. The Washington Nationals do at 18-34 this season, and they're coming off a downright embarrassing performance in Citi Field against the Mets this week. A series in which the Nationals were not competitive in any of those games. They lost all 3 on the run line, all 3 by 5 or more runs. They lost 13-5, 10-0, and 5-0. So a 15-0 end to the last 2 games of the series. The offense is struggling. The starting rotation is struggling. The bullpen is really struggling. And this is not a spot I can take them in. I know they'll be playing a hitter's ballpark, so the offense may wake up a bit. But, Graham Ashcraft has pitched well for the Reds so far. Not a guy that I'm going to be backing too often, as he doesn't strike out a ton of batters, but doesn't give up a lot of hard contact, has really good velocity on his fastball. I think he pitches well enough here for the Reds bats to take care of the rest. I'm going to take the Reds here at a good price on the money line. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Chris Flexen and Jordan Lyles are the projected starters here. Now, right off the bat, I lean towards the over here. I think both starters are worth a fade. Jordan Lyles, 3-4 this year with a 4.26 ERA. Not too bad. He is definitely pitching a lot better than what expectations were for him going into the season. Still gives up a lot of base hits, but he's been able to miss more bats this season than I expected. 51 strikeouts in 57 innings. Not too bad. But on the other side, I have to fade Chris Flexen a little bit more. I know he went toe-to-toe with Verlander in his last start and was actually able to get the win in that one. But he's still a guy, only 37 strikeouts in 50 innings, 9 home runs allowed in those innings. The walks creep up on him. The base hits, he gives up a ton. He's given up at least 6 base hits in his last 4 starts. And the Orioles, they play very well at home. They hit righties a lot better than they do lefties. I'm going to take the plus money value with the Orioles right here on the money line. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the New York Yankees. Shohei Ohtani and Jameson Taillon on the mound for this contest. Now, Shohei Ohtani did struggle quite a bit in the Bronx last season against the Yankees, and he also struggled quite a bit in his last outing against the Blue Jays back on May the 26th. Ohtani went 6 innings with 10 strikeouts. We know he's going to be able to miss a lot of bats, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him strike out a good amount of Yankee batters here also. But he gave up 5 earned runs, 6 hits, 2 home runs as well against those Blue Jays. And now you're pitching at another hitter-friendly ballpark against a team that's been pretty good against you in the past. I do worry about Ohtani a bit. And with the way Jameson Taillon has looked lately, especially his last outing, 8 innings against the Tampa Bay Rays in a 2-0 Yankees win, it's really tough to go against the Bombers in this spot, especially at such a good price, because they're going up against Ohtani and a very flashy Angels team with some of the best players in baseball and Trout and Ohtani in the lineup. The Yankees are getting a little bit disrespected, in my opinion, from the odds makers. I still think they're the better team. I think Taillon has pitched very well this season. I think the Yankees have the much better bullpen also. So I'm going to take the Yankees here on the money line at a solid price. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Sean Manaea and Adrian Hauser are your starters for this one. Now, I do think both teams are going to benefit defensively and pitching-wise with this particular matchup, as Sean Manaea, the lefty, going up against the Brewers lineup that hasn't hit lefties nearly as well as they've hit righties. Brewers are ranked 22nd in baseball in team OPS against right-handed pitching this season. And the Brewers starting Adrian Hauser, a right-handed pitcher who's facing a Padres lineup that hasn't hit righties very well, ranked 27th in baseball in team OPS against righties, and then ranked 29th in baseball in isolated power. Now, the Padres faced a righty that I thought they were going to be able to get to a lot more in Dakota Hudson on Wednesday. That wasn't the case. They scored a run early, but couldn't do a ton of damage after that, and that was really surprising for me. I knew the Padres struggle against righties, but that was a really optimal opportunity for them to get going against right-handers. They weren't able to do it, and I don't think it's going to get any easier against Adrian Hauser. On the other side, Sean Manaea, we've seen him struggle a little bit down the stretch, and now his ERA is above 4. The Brewers hit lefties better than the Padres hit righties. I have to also think the Brewers, playing at home with the better bullpen, makes sense to take him here. So I'm going to take Milwaukee here at a good price on the money line. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Chicago Cubs. Matthew Liberatore and Keegan Thompson are your starters here. Now, it's not going to be too often you're going to see the Cubs and the Cardinals as a pick-em in any spot, whether it's at Wrigley or Busch Stadium. But because of how well Keegan Thompson has pitched, and because of the uncertainties in Matthew Liberatore's game, we see a pick-em right here, minus 110 apiece for this one. And I like the Cubs in this spot. It's not always easy betting on the Cubs. Trust me, the bullpen struggles at times. The lineup doesn't get going in certain spots, but they do hit lefties very well this season. Chicago does. We saw him get after the Brewers left-hander in Eric Lauer the other day at Wrigley Field. And overall this season, the Cubs are top 10 in baseball in team OPS against lefties and number 8 in baseball in isolated power against lefties. Liberatore, he's pitched pretty well in his first few starts. First start of his career wasn't the best. Sharpened up against the Brewers next start, but that's not a team that hits lefties very well. And I do think in this spot at Wrigley Field, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for him. Keegan Thompson, he's been the Cubs' sharpest starter this season by far. Nobody can deny that. 5-0 this season with a 1.58 ERA. Good amount of strikeouts, 35 Ks in 40 innings. Not too bad. The home runs he's limiting, the walks he's limiting hard contact overall. I'm going to take the Cubs here on the money line at Wrigley Field. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the Colorado Rockies. Ian Anderson and Austin Gomber are your starters for this one. Now, I do lean towards the Rockies on the money line, getting the plus money just because I think there's value there, but really I can't back either starting pitcher in this spot. Ian Anderson, I've mentioned all season long, he's a guy that I look to fade quite often, gets behind the count very often, gives up a lot of base hits, and recently home runs as well, and that's not going to bode well at Coors Field against the Rockies team that hits righties well at Coors Field. But on the other side, Austin Gomber, a guy that I was really optimistic about going into the 2022 season, just hasn't been sharp this season. Last outing, 1 1/3 inning against the Washington Nationals, one of the weakest lineups in baseball. 7 hits and 8 earned runs allowed. He has really struggled at times. I know he's more of a Coors Field pitcher, but still against the Atlanta Braves lineup that's looking to break out, I cannot trust Gomber here with his 5.51 ERA. I'm going to take the over in the Braves-Rockies game. I think this series overall is going to be pretty high scoring. Give me the over in Atlanta, Colorado. Next up, our final game of the night, we see the New York Mets taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, this is going to be a really fun series. It's always fun to watch New York take on LA. We saw that with the Yankees and Angels this week already, and then wrapping up this series on Thursday as well. And we're also going to see the Mets and Dodgers here, 2 first-place teams. The Mets first place in the NL East, Dodgers in the NL West. And, both teams have had pretty simple schedules, I'd say, at the beginning of the season. The Dodgers have played a lot of under 500 teams, so they get a little taste of, a very competitive Mets team right now. And the Mets also, they face the Nationals, the Phillies, a good amount already this season. They've controlled those games, but, this is their first taste on the road now at LA. They just played San Francisco not too long ago at Oracle Park and did lose that series. I'm just really excited about this series as a fan's perspective, but in terms of betting-wise, I do think the Dodgers are a solid play here going up against Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker has pitched well and better than I expected this season, but he's still a right-handed pitcher. The Dodgers crush righties this season. He's also not a guy that gets a ton of strikeouts, only 19 of them in 35 innings of work this year. He does put a good amount of runners on base via the base hit and walk, and Tony Gonsolin has just pitched so well for LA this year. 5-0 with a 1.8 ERA. He's striking out batters at a good rate, limiting walks. Home run ball has been a little bit of an issue at times, but I do think he gets the win in this spot, and I think the Dodgers win this game comfortably. But I do think this is going to be a competitive series overall. In Game 1, I'm going to take the Dodgers on the run line. And that's it. Those are the games for Thursday, June 2nd. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.